Hello folks, and welcome to my Scareclaw Kashtira deck profile and guide. We went 8-0 at two different locals with this, or like 8-0 total, getting first place at both locals. So starting off, we first play 3 copies of Scareclaw Rykart. We then play 3 copies of Acro, Astra, and Balone. Playing 3 of each of your main names is good because they extend really easily and make your deck really hard to hand trap, which is pretty good considering things like Kashtira actually do fold to hand traps. Branded hand dependently will fold to Ash, but usually Ash will just still, even if it doesn't kill their turn, it still heavily weakens what they can do. So the fact that you don't lose to the same things is a pretty good bonus. Then you play 2 Regphobia. Now this does get to your good Scareclaws, but at the cost of, if you open it, you can't actually search it. And Scareclaw Lightheart is one of the best hand trap baits in the game because you don't actually care that much. You can usually loop it or sometimes you do just open it, but usually you can just play through having your Lightheart ashed, so it doesn't really affect you. Then you play 2 Arrival. It's a really good extender, but it requires you to draw the names and you can easily search it, so you only need 2. And you usually do go through 2 per game, so for what that's worth. You play 1 Twin Saw. This is your interruption of choice because the Omni just is not good enough, and it's like even worse than this to draw going second. So you opt into Twin Saw, and it's just better. Like if you get Kaiju'd, this is usually still live. If you get Lava Golem, sometimes you have more than 2 Scareclaws, depending on your board state, so this is still going to be live. You play 1 Vizos. This helps you use Lightheart multiple times per turn by destroying it, summoning back Lightheart, and then use that Lightheart to make an additional Lightheart. And then for the Kashtira ratios, you play 3 Fenrir, 1 Unicorn, 2 Scareclaw Kashtira, 2 Kashtira Birth, 1 Pressured Planet Raitsoth, and 1 Terraforming. You play those cards for the kind of obvious reason of they get to your Scareclaws. You have a shared support card in Scareclaw Kashtira, so that makes Lightheart, which turns Fenrir into Lightheart. Birth is just amazing grind game for you. And then you basically have 5 Fenrirs and 3 Unicorns. Also, both Unicorn and Fenrir make pretty good disruption, like if your opponent plays Bestial Druisworm, which could normally out Tryhard pretty easily. You could just Fenrir it on summon and then they just don't get to use it. Then Birth is also usually a live disruption because you'll either end on your Fenrir, Unicorn, or Scareclaw Kashtira, all of which are easy to get to, and with this, it is disruption, which actually I have witnessed cause many decks to screw up and fumble. Now for your flex spots, you get to play 12 of them. At least in main post-siding, you play like 14. But first, 3 Ash, 1 Change of Heart, and 2 Raigeki. I just like being able to just steal something. It came up quite often actually when I did draw a Change of Heart, at least, where like I stole an Ultimate Conductor Tyranno against my opponent in the finals of the first tournament. Then Raigeki is just a good board wipe, but is the most cuttable thing for Change of Heart, so you do just play 2. Because your other cards are like quick plays, which are just better by nature of being quick plays. So you play 3 Chalice, just chain to an interruption, just kind of obvious why that's good. Then Imperm, it is Chalice, but works on your opponent's turn, but it is slightly worse during your turn, which is still good. Oh yeah, and then obviously Ash, because branded exists, but then you can also use it against Labyrinth, Sprite, Kashtira. It just works against everything. So that's the main deck. And then now onto this extra deck. Starting off, you play 3 Lightheart. You play 3 because Kashtira can Unicorn and Diablosis away 2 of them, so that could cause you to lose sometimes. But then you also very often go through 2 or 3 a game because Vizos setups and also just follow-up turns if you have to summon it, so that's why you play 3 of that. 3 Tryhard, also to dodge extra deck rips, but also you can summon this thing multiple times a turn because its effect is not once per turn, just like how Lightheart's effect is not once per turn. So you can get to the correct, you can like cycle around your Scareclaws to get to the correct names to be able to OTK, because sometimes you might end up with multiple of the same name, or like ones that don't enable the multi-attack and attack gain to actually finish off your opponent. Then you play 1 Link Spider, just mainly for Nibiru tokens, but maybe you find a way to get other tokens onto your field, like maybe a Plunder token, for example, so you could use that to convert into effect monsters for the generic effect monster Tryhard. And then also Access Code, which I'll put down in a second. Cherubini. This card turns your level 7s into your Scareclaw 3s, which you need for Tryhard to be live, because Tryhard only revives your 3s. You enable that with your Kashtiras and making Draco Sack, which actually was an MVP because you could like pop back row. It's immune to a lot of forms of interaction, because like they can't torrential you on the token summons, or they can't like Dogmatica Punishment, which someone targeted this with Dogmatica Punishment, and it, well, did not work because I had the tokens. And even if it did work, you have the extension with like your Birth and like Scareclaw Arrival that it wouldn't have even mattered that much anyway. You then play 1 Dark, just generically good. Sometimes helps you climb up into an Access Code if you have to do that, which you do play 1 Access Code. You can use Lingering Tryhards, or like if you have to, you can ladder with like Dark. For your Kashtiras, my generic 7 of choice was Big Eyes, just the most generically applicable. Diablosis was also like a considered option, but just doesn't really seem worth it. It doesn't really do anything for you. You play a Rise Heart mainly for change of heart plays, like you can just yoink their Kashtira after they Shangri Era, slap a Rise Heart over it, punch Zeus, which is right here. But you can also use it to just hard make it if you want to, because you do play enough Kashtira names to do it. If you really have to, like if your opponent just cannot out in a Rise Heart, they just like lose to it instantly, like why not make it? If you open good enough, sometimes you can just make it with Tryhard and then just really ruin your opponent's day. And then you play Baron de Fleur as the last card of the extra deck, because you can make it with like a Kashtira and an Ash, or like another Ghost Girl. I play Bell inside, which you're about to see. Or you can also make it with Vizas and Rykart. So just really easy to make and just protects you from Nib. And just Omni Negates are good. Then for the side deck, I opted to play 3 Bell, 3 Droll, 1 Defanging, 2 Lightning Storm, 1 Duster, 1 Cosmic Cyclone, 3 Evenly Matched, and 1 Scareclaw Alternative. Alternative is really bad, but as a time card, you could easily cut this. I probably should cut this because most of my matches were over too fast for me to even want to put this in. But like if you're concerned about slow playing, easy card to just use. You can pop it with your own Baron, or if you can find another way to discard it. But mainly Baron can pop it because it's better with the Adventure Engine, but I ended up cutting that for flex spots. 3 Evenly is fairly obvious. I don't feel like I need to explain why Evenly Matched is good. Cosmic Cyclone, Lightning Storm, and Duster after Evenly though, I opted to go heavy into the Disruption because I was expecting a lot of Labyrinth, which there was a little bit. And also Trap Tricks, because Trap Tricks is fairly popular. It's like your new Salamangreat, get 3 structures, do good. And you lose hard to traps because if they like interrupt your normal and then your follow-up Kashtira, or your opening Kashtira play and then your normal summon, it's really hard to do anything unless if you open like complete gas, which is obviously not guaranteed. So just having a way to say no is pretty good. Defanging, you don't like to main it because it's just kind of high rolly and it feels kind of mid if you don't even know if your opponent like needs to target and destroy Tryhard. So that's why you side it. You just matchup selection it, and sometimes it's just better going second. Like you could take out Twin Saw for defanging if it would help. Lockbird was weird. I was expecting more decks to play into it, but they just kind of didn't. Like it still is just an option, but honestly, I would suggest Dogoron, the Mad Flame Kaiju, over the Droll Lock instead, so you can just like Kaiju over an Arise Heart or a Shangri-Ira that's locking your zones, because you don't care about Arise Heart too much, and you have a lot of ways to interact with it. And then Bell, it never feels the best, but it works against some of the labyrinth traps, and it's fine against Branded. Also, speaking of Branded, Expulsion is a card that exists, and unfortunately that means we need to be prepared for it. Also, to mention, originally this was 3 Cosmic, but I then bought Lightning Storms and they seemed pretty good. You could also replace this Cosmic with a 3rd Lightning Storm, or replace the Lightning Storms with 2 more Cosmics. It doesn't super matter. Just kind of depends on if you're more scared of a set 5, or if you're more scared of them having the Heavenly Prison, Lord of the Heavenly Prison card. Now for the more guide-oriented section of the video, we are going to do a combo guide. So the first combo I'm going to show off is just 1 Scareclaw. In this case, we'll use a 3. So you just normal it, make Lightheart, effective Lightheart, you add the Reichphobia. Obviously this combo is not going to be the best of things ever, because you're kind of locked out on resources, but obviously you're never just going to have 1 card in hand, so you're never going to actually just end on this board by itself. But then you use the right card effect, add Arrival, activate Arrival, target your Acro, link 3 into the Scareclaw Tryhard. Effective Tryhard, it can only target your 3, so you will target your Scareclaw Acro. Then resolve the second half of the effect to add your... There's not really a good add here, so you probably just add Reichart for follow-up. Then this board off of 1 card is a forced to defense mode, immune to the activated effects of defense mode monsters, so even Tryhard by itself just really says screw you to Branded. Because at bigger tournaments it was ruled that even if a monster leaves the field, if that effect was activated while said monster was in defense position, Tryhard remains immune. It's at 33 because of your Acro, and it is losing 100, or your opponent's monsters are losing 100 for each monster on the field in defense mode, including theirs, but then it's already just a 100. So you have that going for you. Of course, if you're super scared of Lava Golem, like if your opponent's on Labyrinth and you truly did only open 1 name, you could always try just ending on Tryhard. Just leave this in graveyard and just wait for next turn to then burst out with a bunch of damage. But that's a little bit risky. A little bit of a high risk, high reward, not getting Lava Golemed. Anyway, moving on to the next combo shortly. Here's the second combo. We're just going to show off only Kashtiras. Now, you might be wondering why I just chose to add a 1 of, but this is actually just a 3 of because you also have the Terraforming and the Rate South, so all of your Kashtiras aren't actually... You can always add an additional 2 copies to each of your Kashtira numbers. And then the obviously searchable by your Scareclaw cards, Scareclaw Kashtira, you're never going to be short on these guys. If you did open Fenrir Unicorn, first you would special Unicorn and effect to add Birth. Right there. Activate Birth. Normal summon Kashtira Fenrir. Use its effect, add your Scareclaw Kashtira. Then you can overlay your Kashtiras. Make one of the MVPs of the deck, honestly. Low-key, super busted, but all of its effects are good. Draco Sack. Just pretend it's Dragon Ruler format. You can detach whichever Kashtira. If you get like hit by Nib, for example, after Draco Sack, if they're like trigger happy, you should technically detach the Kashtira you're more likely to want to revive with Birth. I'm a Unicorn fan myself, so I will detach Unicorn. Summon 2 tokens. Let's just use some empty sleeves. Like so and so. Link the 2 tokens off. Make Cherubini. You can use Cherubini, target itself, and send any of your 3s. Your technically best 3 though to end on is Acro. So you can have attack on your opponent's turn, make your tryhard slightly bigger, which makes it more annoying to out. Then since you're 1 material short, now you can activate your Scareclaw, banish your Unicorn, summon itself. Now link the 3 off. Oh, by the way, if you get nibbed, you'd have both of them engraved, but like just detach the one you'd want to revive if you get like impermed. I'm more meant, not nibbed specifically. Anyway, link the 3 off. Since that is 3 effect monsters, you can make Tryhard. And since you use the Cherubini off of your Draco Sack tokens, which are level 3, you do actually have a 3 to revive with this effect. So Tryhard, target Acro, and then add a Scareclaw. Right card. Although, actually, first you'd want to revive a Kashtira. So, you know, we do a bit of cheating for the combo vid. It's just a little bit harder to truly remember what you're doing when you're not actually playing. So, first you want to Birth, revive Unicorn or Fenrir, whichever you're feeling is better for your matchup. Then you would go Tryhard, target Acro, revive it, then summon Reichardt, effective Reichardt. Add your Scareclaw Twinsaw, then you would get to draw on resolution. So let's just say we draw, and draw this Imperm. Of course you can also draw names, which are good for follow-up. In this situation, you're actually in a bit of a slightly strange spot where you're playing kind of heavily into a potential branded fusion. Or sorry, super polymerization against branded. So in this case, I would actually link these into an additional Tryhard. Use its effect again, as it's a soft once, to summon back your Acro, and add another Tryhard to your hand for follow-up. Then any remaining names are also follow-up. You got Twinsaw. You can do whatever with your draw for Reichardt, which is either going to be follow-up or interruption, both of which heavily help your game plan. So even if branded does like normal Aluber and then super polys, you still have your Scareclaw Twinsaw to hopefully survive the turn. Unicorn can mess them up depending on their ratios. Birth definitely can mess them up because they are activating spells a lot because they're branded. Then also your hand traps that you draw. You have an additional crack at getting Ash with your Reichardt effect. Also, such as things like Imperm Chalice, anything will mess them up. And you just need to slow them enough down to kill them on your follow-up turn. Like if they out this, you can go Lightheart again, add the field spell after Reicharting into an Arrival, and that's just really hard to deal with because you have a lot of gas. And then Birth also gets you to Scareclaw names because you have the Scareclaw Kashtira in graveyard. So all around, that's just cracked follow-up. And then obviously any Scareclaw names you open with Kashtiras get you to more stuff, and you can just use them as bodies. And that's the end of that combo. Now this will be our test hand session, where we just go over test hands, as this will be much more accurate to what the deck can do instead of your basic combos. So let's get in a good shuffle. This deck's whole point though, test hands are more like, especially test combos where I just show you specific combos, aren't really accurate to what the deck will do, because like you have to constantly adapt to what your opponent is doing, like, oh no, my Lightheart got ashed, or stuff like that. So you're going to want to just grind some games with this deck, because game sense, especially with this deck, will be incredibly rewarding. You opened maximum gas here. You could... Okay, so let's see. Probably just open with Fenrir. Fenrir's gonna probably be good at baiting something out. But let's just say it resolves here. That's just some follow-up, because you can just add Scareclaw. Adding Unicorn here doesn't really help you because you don't have Birth up, so just Scareclaw. It's follow-up, even if you already opened it. Normal summon Scareclaw Acro. With this hand, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could be greedier or less greedy with Reichheart. It's likely they don't nib you immediately, and even if they do, you still have your Scareclaw to do stuff. So realistically, you probably just Reichheart immediately. You can play into nib a little bit, because most people won't be so trigger happy. So we're gonna add a rival for this. We're gonna link one, specifically the Acro. You're gonna leave the Reichheart on field for what you're about to see. You go Lightheart effect, add your field spell, Reichphobia. Then you activate the Reichphobia. This, you don't actually want to add a Scareclaw here. You want to add Visas. One, you already opened literally every Scareclaw, basically anyway. But two, you definitely have enough gas to make Baron before committing to anything where you still can't just play through nib. So, effect, destroy, summon. I believe that is summon 5, or it's about to be 5 after Lightheart. You revive Lightheart, maybe force Abyssal, or they could nib you here. But you have the Scareclaw Kashtira, the Arrival, and the Link Spider in extra. So even if they nib you here, you're still ending on stuff. And then you still have this to survive. But let's just say they don't nib you here, so we can show off this interaction where Lightheart used a monster in the main monster zone for itself and was summoned in the EMZ, so you can use its effect again, as only the graveyard effect has restrictions, and that's once per duel. But the add the field spell isn't once per turn. Activating the field spell, however, is once per turn, but follow-up is follow-up. Now you can Synchro, make Baron de Fleur. So if they had nib and they weren't trigger happy, they already missed their chance to hit you. Now you definitely have gas to just like keep even Fenrir on field for extra protection against, say, like a Bishal Druisworm specifically. The rest of the Bishals don't really scare you. Then you can preserve Scareclaw or use it. It doesn't really matter. You could definitely end on a Draco Sack if you wanted. That'd probably be pretty good, because then they couldn't like kaiju. If you end on your entire monster zone field, like they can't kaiju you. So if you know they're on kaijus, or at least have a reason to suspect it, you could do a Draco Sack setup and purposely fill up your whole zones. For this case though, let's just use this. You can banish your Lightheart on resolution, summon. It's a little bit weirder because you are not ending on Twin Saw, but you have Fenrir, which is Twin Saw at home, and then you have Baron, which is a Omni, so it's still really good. And then you can go 5 Acro. If you did want a Draco Sack, you would have had to do it before the Triheart commitment. Then I would just add more follow-up, and now you are very likely to, you are very likely to survive with this board. This is very hard to kill through, let alone play through, especially for Kashtira and Branded. Even Labyrinth would struggle a fair bit with this. Then you have 3 cards in hand for follow-up, or 4 actually, all 4, because Bologna is still right there. So they'd have to open like Super Poly Lava Golem plus plays, and then still kill you through this, because you could just do this during their turn. If it helps you live, you might as well, because you have mad gas in hand. Also, you have destruction protection, so if they try to access code your arrival, you can at least stall them out a bit with it. So this board is, 1, incredibly hard to kill through, and 2, with the amount of follow-up you have, you are very likely to just completely murder them on the follow-up, because 4 Scareclaw cards plays through a lot. So that's the last actual section of the video. So mainly I would suggest just actually, yeah, it's going to sound a little bit lame, but like practice. You want to be able to develop game sense and like adapt your game plan constantly, because that's just what this deck is going to do. This deck is very good at like playing through stuff, especially with a skilled pilot who's like equipped to like force out interactions and is patient with their own interactions. Like if you're willing to wait with your interactions and like only do things that would affect your tryhard, you are going to see a lot of success with this deck. Obviously, this deck does have some outs, but lucky for you, those outs are also not super meta relevant. Like, except Kaijus. Like, Lava Golem comes up, but like, not every deck is playing it, because a decent few of them do actually enjoy their normal. And they do actually have to draw it, but then also Kaijus kind of suck, but you do actually have ways to play around Kaijus, and even if you do get Kaiju, you have Twin Saw, you can pop, you still probably live, and then you kill them on the crackback. So, if you think you'd be a decent player at adapting to interruptions and want to put in the practice, you can definitely succeed with this deck. Alternate options you could also do with Scareclaws are, well, you could play Tri-Brigade, but I just wouldn't suggest that. The Tri-Brigade cards just aren't good, especially in modern day. You could also play Adventure cards. That build is good, but Adventure, like, it definitely works. It plays around Nibiru much better than my build does, because Griffin just says no nib, but it loses to everything else, because you're losing to things like Thrust harder and like Triple Tack, because they can just yoink your tryhard, and it kind of sucks. But on the other hand, what you have is more flex spots for things like Kashtira. You can side into like 7 back row removal, and then like Ash and Bell really easily. Like, that would be like 13 cards. But you can side off like 1 Balone or like 1 Twin Saw and just get that back up. I would side out of both those actually though, to play Defang, and then against your matchups of Trap Tricks and Labyrinth, they just can't really do that much. Unless if you just defy all odds and draw nothing to counter them, in which case that just kind of sucks. But that's just kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! Nowadays. So I hope y'all enjoyed and learned something. Be it if you just wanted to learn how the deck worked, or if you actually plan to play it, or maybe just want to try something. You're not so sure yet. All of those, I'm glad I could help teach you, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.